Okay, now it's working. All right, here we go. Let's get this zoomed in. And today we are carrying on with our functions information. We're talking about 3.3, which is equations as functions. All right. So functions can also be represented by an equation or a rule. It's like the mathematical or the algebraic rule. The equation will generate ordered pairs by taking an input, which is X, that results in a certain output, which is Y. The graph of an equation is the set of all its ordered pairs, which often forms a line or a curve. A curve is when you have, for instance, X squared. A line, it would be just when it's X. We'll deal mostly with the line today. Okay, so carrying on. Example for functions, you input the X, and when you do the function rule, you get your Y. So you think of a function like a machine that takes an X value and produces a Y value, an X value and produces a Y value. The X value is called the independent variable because you pick it, okay? The X value, you control that, okay? You pick it or control it. The Y value is called the dependent variable because its value will depend on the value of X. That's where, if you remember last year, I had y'all fill in the blank, this, fill in the blank of this sentence, blank depends on blank. And it's always the Y depends on X. Therefore, you, from this, if it's a word problem, you can determine what's the X and what's the Y. All right, so let's work a couple of problems. Looking at number 1, okay? We want to complete the function table, fill in the Y values, and then graph the function. So with this, we're going to need a sheet of paper extra because our work is not going to fit on here. So I'm gonna grab paper to be able to work on as well. Okay, so this is going to be,
Can I see left more?
give me just a second. This is working right. All right, here we go. So this, we're going to label this as 3.3. Notes, work. Number 1. So here's my equation, Y equals X plus 4. And I'm going to take these X values right here and I'm plugging them in to this equation, this rule. So I'm going to have -5 plus 4. So I'm going to have Y equals -5 plus 4. Y equals -1. So here we go. There's -1. And then I'm going to have Y equals, let me see what's going to be the best way for me to show this. Okay. So you can see everything that I'm doing here. I need to zoom out a little bit so you can see. Okay, there we go. So now I'm plugging in the values, the table values, the X values in the table. So I'm going to have Y equals -4 plus 4, which is going to give me Y equals 0. So I put the 0 in the Y value that goes with the -4. Then I'm going to have Y equals -2 because this is the X value. I'm plugging it in for this X, -2 plus 4, which gives me Y equals 2. And then I'm going to have Y equals 0 plus 4, which gives me Y equals 4. And then next it says to graph. So I've completed the table and now I need to graph my points. So I now move my work and I'm going to plot my points. So I'm going to have -5, -1. So that's -5 on the axis. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and -1. There we go. -4, 0. -2, 2. And 0, 4. And then I get a straight edge, a ruler, side of a sheet of paper, anything, and I play connect the dots. And you make sure that your graph goes all the way through the coordinate plane. Okay, now let's work another example. And I'm going to jump down and we're going to do number 4. So on my work, here's number 4, and I'll write my equation. Y equals -3/2 x plus 2. And I'm plugging in these x values into the equation. So I'm going to have y equals, and I'm plugging in -2. So I'm going to have -3/2 times -2. But I've got to make that into a fraction. So I'm going to put this as -2/1 plus 2. So now I got to do my math. Do my multiplication. Well, I can simplify here. So 2 goes into 2 one time. 2 goes into -2, -1 time. So I have -3 times -1. So that's going to give me a +4 plus 2. So I end up with y equals 6. No, I'm not adding here. We're multiplying. -3 times -1 is not 4. It is 3. So we get 3 plus 5, 2, which is 5. So therefore I put a 5 in the y spot. And now I solve for each one. So now I'm going to have y equals -3/2 times 0 plus 2, which y equals, well, anything times 0 is going to be 0. This one's kind of an easier one. 0 plus 2 is 2. And then we have our third example. So y equals -3/2 times 2/1 plus 2. So I'm going to have the 2's can cancel. So I'm left with -3/1, which is -3 plus 2. And y equals -1. And now I have my third one. So I have y equals, make sure you can see what I'm writing, -3/2 times 4/1. And yes, you have to write it as the fraction, so you follow your fraction rules, plus 2. And I cross cancel. 2 goes into 2 one time, 2 goes into 4 twice. So that's going to give me -6 plus 2. So y equals -4. And now I plot my points. So I have -2, 5, 0, 2, 2, -1, and 4, -4. And we play connect the dots all the way through your graph. And put the arrows because it does continue. Next example. Excuse me. Looking at number 9. Okay, this is just a little bit of a different view. Okay, but it's still, I'm given an equation and I'm given the domain. We've just got to remember that when it's saying domain, remember that's x. So this is saying that when, this is x, when x equals these numbers, I want to know what is the y value. It is saying what is range, or what are the y values equal for these x's? For these x's. Okay, so for my work, there's not enough space in here. necessarily to show that work, but what I'm going to do is I am going to set up a table of values so I can know what goes with what. So I'm doing -2, 3, 5. I want to know what are the y values that go with this. So I'm going to show my work. This is number 9, and my equation is 4 minus x. So that means I'm going to have y equals 4 minus -2. Put it in the parentheses because it's the negative number, so that you remember that's a double negative, which gives you 4 plus 2. So the y value equals 6. And then we have y equals 4 minus 3. So y equals 1. And then we have y equals 4 minus 5, which means y equals -1. You've got to follow your integer rules. Now, it just wants to know in my directions, find the range values. So to write my answers for this is where we're going to use the set notation. So I'm going to say R equals curly bracket, and we list them in order from least to greatest. Okay, list in order from least to greatest. So it's -1, 1, 6. This is my answer to this problem. All right, let's work one more example. Number 11. Okay, so for number 11, here's my rule, my domain. So that means my x values. I'm looking for my y. It's -4, 0, 6. I want to know what the range is for these. So now I'm going to do my work. So I have my rule, which is, so this is number 11. Y equals 7 minus 1/2 x. So now I plug in, so I'm going to have y equals 7 minus 1/2 times -4. Remember, I've got to make the -4 into a fraction. So 2 goes into 2 one time, 2 goes into -4, -2 times. So now it's a double negative here. So this is going to become 7 plus 2. So y equals 9. So when it's x is -4, the y is 9. Next example. So you can't tell because it's skip a spot. That's the rule. So I'm going to have y equals 7 minus 1/2 times 0. Remember, anything times 0 is 0. So this is just y equals 7. That was pretty easy. So now I have y equals 7 minus 1/2 times 6. So then what's half of 6? So we have 7 minus 3. Y equals 4. So now when I'm writing my range, remember I put it in order from least to greatest. So this is going to be 4, 7, 9. And there's my answer. Okay. Now we're going to move on to the next page. Which is where we are talking about the different ways to represent relations. Okay. Most of these you can do. The one that might trip you up that I'm going to do with you is going to be this one down here when it's an equation. Okay. When it's x squared, y equals x squared minus 1. One thing that you can do in your calculator so that you can see what that graph's going to be. Okay, let me see if I can get this to show. Or is it not going to show? There, it kind of shows like that. So if I'm going to type in that exact equation, so I'm going to press the x equals, the variable button, which is next to the green button, x squared minus 1. And when I graph that, I hit it, and then I hit graph. Zoom 6 for standard window, zoom 6. And now you can see, and I can think about, okay, what is the domain and range for this figure? Well, when I look at it, I'm going to kind of sketch a graph here. And I'm going to notice that if I look at my calculator real closely, it intersects the y-axis. The lowest point is at -1. So I'm making a U shape that hits at -1. This is not turning out as nice. And then it keeps going. The graph only goes so far. Okay, since it is hitting at -1 as the lowest, that means I can think, oh, my range has got to be everything that's bigger than that, everything that's up here. So it's going to be y is greater than or equal to -1. And then I'm going to have, okay, well, what's my domain? Are there any limits on how far it's going to go out? Because it continues going in these directions. Nope. So this is all real numbers. And then we want to know, is this a function or not? So looking at this, would this pass the vertical line test? And yes, it would. If I drew a vertical line through here in different spots, it only hits one time. So the answer here is yes. The rest of these you've all seen, so you should be able to write the domain and range for these. So your assignment is to finish the notes and the classwork homework in this table. Have a great day.